All right, welcome everyone. Another week, another Natural Ones, joined as ever by the Dutch boy, Victor Gorchev.
Hoi iedereen.
And we got Matt and Nick from Black Lodge Games. Thank you guys for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Yes, thanks for having us.
Yeah, our pleasure. Vic told me that we wanted to discuss OSR games, designing OSR games, and I'm all about that. Vic's designed some stuff. I've designed some stuff. Sounds like you guys want to design some stuff. So I thought that would be a cool subject. And I'm sure there's someone out there watching the recording later who's like, I wanted to design something and they don't feel confident to do so. So maybe talking about it will encourage them to make the thing that they are too scared to make. So
yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I remember you guys talking on one of your streams, like, I don't know, a week or two ago, that you guys were thinking of, like, you know, you wanted to get into making your own games and you were considering using the OSR for it because, you know, it's kind of like a ready-made, I hate using this word, but it's a ready-made community. So, you know, and then John was like already saying like, yeah, we should invite those guys on the stream. So I was like, yeah, well, that would be a good topic, I think. So
gosh. Crafty.
Yeah.
This content may not be suitable for Shauna. Shauna guidance suggested.
No, we're not doing a let's play, so we're good.
Yeah, we're
right.
good.
Yeah. Hopefully we're not going to end up on Roll for Sanity.
Roll for Sanity.
Yeah.
We might. I don't know.
And for those of you watching, I am petting a dog here, but the RTX background removal is removing it. So
I thought you just petting that guy's leg in your
There she is. But I mean, we've been interested in game design for a long time. We kind of kicked off this whole project probably like 3 or 4 months ago. After talking for like years on the phone, we finally realized we're like, you know what, we'll talk about this for like 2.5 hours at a time every week. So we should probably start recording this.
Make it worth our while. Put it out there.
Yeah, and so neither of us is really an OSR guy per se. Like I came up on AD&D second edition like when I was a kid, and then when I was a teenager moved into more like the White Wolf games a lot. And we've wanted to make games for a long time, and kind of thinking about like not just how do you go about that, but what's kind of the most successful way to do this? I've been binge watching pundits videos for a couple of months now, and I think he's kind of right that if you're not making a game that's compatible with D&D, or you at least don't have a conversion of some kind, you're leaving him like kind of a massive amount of money, and more importantly, you're leaving a big audience on the table, because D&D is the most popular role-playing game of all time, and it's probably not going to stop being that.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah. And like Matt said, we've talked about games, all the things we're talking about on the channel and on the podcast for a very long time and at length. If you have any interest or if you're involved in the hobby for any extended period of time, particularly to the degree that Matt and I are, we have a lot of ideas. Ideas just come naturally with regard to setting and themes and, worlds and situations and genres you'd like to see inhabited. But finding a home mechanically for that is always, at least for me, that's the real question. That's the real needle to thread, because in some ways creativity and those kinds of free form ideas are easy, but how and where and in what system, in what way do you make those things actually come to life?
Yeah.
because system does matter.
It really
and
matters a lot.
So
Well,
do you,
yeah.
do you
I
go
found
for
that in
something
design.
that's, been around and purports to do a lot of different genres, equally well, or you choose something else, make your own rules. But yeah, the OSR is really interesting, and seeing the history of sort of where the hobby has come to where it is now, the rebirth, the renaissance, whatever you want to call it, is really interesting.
Yeah, that's been kind of the most interesting part of this too, is that like we're interested in ideas a lot, and before I knew about the OSR, all I was seeing on YouTube with role playing games was like 5e lifestyle brand, and it was depressing, And so finding the OSR was like, oh my god, these guys are like actually talking about interesting things. I don't agree with all of it, but it was,
Sure.
at least there's something going on there.
Yeah, it's I think what makes the OSR interesting is it's unlike the lifestyle brand 5e influencer area. Like there's no WotC, there's no like king of the OSR.
Yeah.
There's people within the OSR that would like hate my guts, and there's people in the OSR that like me, and it's like there's woke people in the OSR, there's non-woke people, there's people that don't care, but like somehow it's still all under this umbrella. And I think for the most part, like we might have a little slap fights every once in a while with each other, but like we all get along still, and like respect each other in a big different way, in a different way than like the 5e sphere, where if you say the wrong thing or something like that, all of a sudden you're canceled and
Right.
Yeah, you're ostracized,
everything you work for is gone.
Well, the fact that there's a community at all in the absence of some kind of head, although as Bishop Garibay has told us, you're right, there's not a king of the OSR, there's a queen of the OSR,
Right. And that is Kelsey Dion, and she is Hollywood ready.
We all pay field to her, of course. But yeah, I mean, that speaks to something real and something interesting, that kind of an amorphous, perhaps, but an identity can still be maintained without tight defined controls in place.
Well, you mentioned like it's a ready-made audience, and that's true. But the nice thing about the OSR is that it generally uses systems that are so hackable that you can make like a game that introduces like something new, and people will accept it. And you can kind of use that as like a springboard to like, I'm going to start off with some OSR games. I'm slowly going to introduce like these weird mechanics, like my own homebrew stuff, and then eventually I'm going to make my own homebrew system. And then you've got like you've got fans, you've got people that already bought your work, that know what you're capable of. And they might be willing to check out that new system that you wrote. That if you just write that from out of nowhere, nobody will give a shit. So
right, yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah,
and about the kind of like subcultures even within the OSR, we've talked about this before. I've come from like different political circles, and to the outside, like libertarians or Republicans or Democrats, socialists, doesn't matter what it is. It looks like some sort of monolith from the outside, but within each one of those groups, it's all like this circular firing squad. Like it's all like factions of people who hate each other for minute differences.
About Elf Game.
Yeah, exactly, about Elf Game.
But yeah, to Vic's point though, like there's a lot of different ways you could go when you're designing your own OSR game. I have Atomic Punk, and when I originally released that, it was like a pretty much straight up copy of BX with like a post-apocalyptic Fallout style vibe over it. Then the OGL stuff happened, and I'm like, I'm gonna take this as an opportunity to sort of like make this thing a little more like what I want it to be. Because the thing that I was afraid of when I made it originally was, if I stray too far from D&D, are people still going to be interested in it? And are they still going to like it? But with the OGL thing, I'm like, this is the perfect time. I'm going to like quickly redo this game and re-release it to get it away from the OGL, but then also to make it what I kind of originally envisioned. And my two favorite games are Traveler, like old 1977 Traveler, and BX D&D, I like AD&D too. I'm running an AD&D game, but BX was like my introduction into old school gaming. And so I was like, what if I just take those two things and always phrase it as like making Classic Traveler and BX Kiss, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and I was like, well, are people going to accept that? Like, are they going to accept rolling, for instance, 2d10 instead of a d20 for like attack rolls and skill checks? And I was surprised that like a lot of people were okay with that, and they seemed like within the OSR, they're like, oh, this is cool. Like, we're willing to accept this. I think part of it was that like I offered conversions for like if you want to use more traditional OSR content, like here's how you can convert like AC to my weapon versus armor attack matrix and all that kind of stuff because it doesn't use AC. But like I was really surprised. I was, you know, kind of like a breath of fresh air or a sigh of relief. Like, oh, good.
Yeah, that's good news. I mean, I could see that being a huge concern, especially like I said, you know, there aren't tight walls and tight corners around, you know, what is OSR and what's not OSR. And so if you stray a bit far, are you alienating, you know, the already fractious community? That's not real OSR or something to that effect.
Right.
That's nice. There's been acceptance there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say for the most part, OSR, like, you know, people associate it with fantasy games, but my niche is like I like modern, I like cyberpunk. I basically did the OSR version of D20 modern, and people like it, and I'm actually like, you know, people seem to accept me in the OSR community. I fucking hate that word, but whatever. But and like. Yeah, it's just nice being able to do like my little niche, but still having like, you know, this audience out there that like, you know, appreciates what I'm doing. So.
Yeah, that's for me something that I'm especially curious about with regard to the OSR and, you know, the older D&D or mechanics. You know, a lot of OSR stuff is still in that fantasy genre, high fantasy, low fantasy, but a lot of it seems like it's still predominantly fantasy. So, you know, we have some ideas and thoughts and passions about other genres, modern or cyberpunk, like you were saying, or straight sci-fi.
Yeah.
So try to do some research and see how those mechanics handle those very different genres, those different worlds, the different conflicts that you get into.
Yeah, because I mean, we've talked about this a bunch of times. Like the mechanics really of a game are like the skeleton that just like everything else hangs off of. And I am not of the belief that there is one system to rule them all, you know? And for whatever game that you are designing, ideally you want to have the proper mechanics for that game. But there is kind of a balancing act that you have to do between like making the mechanics for the game and making a game that people will buy and actually play. And that's I think kind of what we're trying to figure out at the moment.
Yeah, when I was doing my other game is Cowpunchers, which is not OSR. It's its own unique system. But I was originally trying to make that OSR and it didn't work. Like it was one of those things where like the rules, they were not. I view D&D as like it's like a Western spaghetti Western kind of blended with post-apocalyptic shenanigans and fantasy. Like that's my view of like old school D&D because it's the world when you look at OD&D and you look at the monster list, and even Gygax says like if you want to introduce sci-fi elements at some point, and it's like okay, this is not just like Lord of the Rings simulator. This is a little more weird than that. So when I was trying to do like I wanted to do straight Western because I was like, I'm not doing Weird West. Someone else can do that. There's already plenty of that. I just want like Tombstone or like a Sergio Leone movie.
Yeah.
But in a game form. And like I just couldn't get the OSR rules to do what I wanted to do. Now, the Red Room did, I think, with Wretched Country, but I think Miguel's pretty creative, so he probably came at it from a way that I couldn't. But that was when I was like, these rules are just not working for this setting. I have to design a system that will fit the setting that I want.
Yeah,
so that's what I did.
Speaking of Red Room, I've actually got Wretched Role Playing right here.
Nice.
We're going to be reviewing this pretty soon. This is pretty cool. I like the kind of genre crossing Everything, yeah, the art's great. They used a lot of
Yeah.
AI art in it as well, but it's pretty cool. It's just self-aware enough, and we really like those guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do good work, and they're like very prolific. Like they, I don't
Yeah,
know,
they put
Yeah.
out so
it's
much stuff.
It's. I'm almost jealous sometimes. It's like, God damn, they're coming out with another book. I'm still working on my first one.
Yeah,
Well, I
Yeah.
asked Miguel that, and I'm like, "What's your secret, Miguel?" And it's not
Yeah.
that he's written it all. Like he just sits down and just hammers away at the keyboard. Like these are all older things. Like he's
Yeah,
been-
that's what he told me too.
oh,
Yeah.
okay.
he
Yeah.
was delving into
Yeah.
a back catalog of like homebrew stuff and stuff
Yeah.
that he'd been working on, and he's like shotgun blasting it at
Yeah.
all at once.
That's
so.
cool. Yeah. But I'd actually be interested to hear a little bit more about what insights you took in that experience for Cowpunchers. What was it, do you think, that prevented, because you've said D&D has certainly a spaghetti western thematic roots to it. What was it about the rules, at least how you were taking it, that prevented it from clicking? Was it the situations you wanted to have happen that really weren't supported mechanically? Was it something about the tone, or
Just the feel.
Yeah.
I would say it was more a feel thing. Like I'm not like a when I design things, like I go by a lot of feel. And so when I was writing it and I was like trying to write classes for the game, and I'm like, classes just feels weird in this. That was one thing. I was like,
Yeah.
this is a Western, and like there's a lawman class and a bandit class. I'm like, but like skill wise, there wouldn't be that much difference between the two.
Right.
You know? So it would come down to, that's why I went a skill-based system that I made.
Yeah.
Because I was like, it's going to be more based on, here's some skills and how am I going to role play those skills, you know? But
Yeah,
I
whereas
go by
like
I go
in-
with a lot of feel. So
in like D&D, like you look at like the fighter, the thief, the wizard, the cleric, like these are kind of like archetypal characters, whereas in a Western, like bandit and sheriff, very, very close in what they actually are and do and represent.
Yeah.
Like they're just kind of, they're on opposite sides of the law, but they're not fundamentally different in that way.
Well, that's why you make just the gunslinger class, and they can be a bandit or a sheriff.
Yep.
And then you have the buffalo hunter class, you have the mountain man class. I could make it
Right.
work. I'm actually planning to. Like I like the idea of like a mountain man class that can eat a liver, and he gets like a temporary bonus on like on a stat or whatever. But that will probably lean more into like weird West and stuff, where you can like play
Sure.
with those archetypes a bit more. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Vic, that's a good point,
Yeah.
because but that's exactly right. Like a gunslinger,
Yeah.
but a gunslinger is a lawman. A gunslinger is a bandit, a cattle rustler.
Yeah.
That's definitely something thematic to a more straight Western, or at least a more dramatic, Western interpretation. Everyone in the West is kind of an island unto themselves. Everybody is a combatant to or at least capable and willing, if the situation comes to it, and it will, to,
Yeah.
draw guns. So how you could certainly make it work, but there would be a danger of making different classes be different shades of what's ultimately the same archetype,
Yeah.
which is, there is no real civilization in the West, and everyone is, a loner to a greater or
Some
lesser
extent,
degree.
yeah.
To make it work, you have to really lean into the archetypes. You can't just keep it like fake and neutral. You have to like literally just like delve like very deep into the archetypes. It's like I said, the mountain man that like can eat somebody's liver and it gives them like a temporary stat boost, stuff like that. So and again, that works better for Weird West probably, or like like steampunk type stuff than it does like straight up spaghetti westerns. But yeah.
that was my thing. Is like I don't know. I think at the time too, I was very much into like deep diving into Traveler, and getting really into Traveler, which is a 2D6 game.
Something we still need to do. And are
Yeah,
interested
it's
in
on the
doing.
list, but we both bought so many role-playing books in the last 2 months that we're kind of like pumping the brakes for a while.
I did a video on it. I had to splurge and get like an original 1977 box
Oh,
set.
nice.
Oh, cool.
So I got this little artifact here. But I was going, balls deep into this, and it was this was really speaking to me because this is just so grounded, gritty sci-fi.
Yeah.
You can die in character creation. So,
Right.
And there's everything's a dead level. There's like you can try and kind of gain some more skills, but like it's very much the rule books say, like Mark Miller says, the player advances by learning to play their character better. Like that's how that's your reward in your
truth.
that's your reward and you're gonna like it.
Yeah, we got a question from Crafty Matt here for you guys.
Sure.
For Black Lodge Games, you guys come from a more narrative style of role playing. What made you both look at the more procedural gaming of the OSR? I don't know that we come from a particular. I think that the way that people define narrative gaming is used differently in different contexts. Like there's definitely if you're talking about like the critical role style stuff, that's not what we do. Like for sure. But we're a lot more interested in like. We like staying in character. We like the role play aspect of it. But the way that we run our games, I don't know that it's that far off philosophically from a lot of the OSR stuff because we're kind of coming up with things on the fly. We're never, making like a pre-built story in advance. It's all about what the character choices do, where they go next. What's been interesting to me has been finding like good products that have some good examples of how these procedural systems are used. Like, for instance, right now my obsession is Lion and Dragon and Dark Albion from Pundit. And that book has, at least the Cults of Chaos and Dark Albion have some really, really cool tables. The ones that I thought were just awesome were in Cults of Chaos, the tables for actually generating the structures of cults. For adventures, I was like, "Oh, this is awesome!" I was like, "I could totally use this." And there's been, I don't know. There's been some. I feel like there's been a bit of a blind spot that I've had in regard to the use of these procedures, but at the same time, I don't think I will ever be relying on them in the same way that a lot of OSR DMs do, because it's just it's not what I'm interested in. The stuff I'm interested in mostly is going to be like the character-based stuff.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I would say, I mean, the simple answer is, why are we looking at these things? Both of us having never really experienced iterations of D&D or the game from that early. Matt, you have more experience with earlier editions of D&D than I do, but
well, that's not true. You're playing a second edition game right now, and you're using all those weapon speeds.
I didn't start that one though.
Yeah,
and I'm very rapidly crystallizing my opinions on second edition. But it just curiosity, an interest in alleviating the the known unknowns. I know there's these other styles of play. There have been these other rules, which West March's games and domain play and troop style play and all of these different things, which I've thought about a little bit, but have never experienced either as a player or as a GM. So, okay, let's figure out, because maybe, like you said, Matt, some blind spots. There may be something that is really inspiring or is really evocative or that flows well with the style of play you were mentioning.
Yeah, and there's also we had I think talked about this probably on our last stream, but the style of play, maybe it's West Marsh's, I can't remember, but I'm forgetting the term at the moment, but we're basically like at a game shop, you've got Wednesday one party is coming in playing with the DM, Friday the other party, they're in the same world and
that's
delving into the
Marsh's,
same
Yes.
like that sounds really cool to me, like on like a theoretical level, but I can't imagine it working out.
with infinite time and infinitely good people around who also had infinite time, that sounds spectacular.
That sounds awesome, but like it's just we're both very picky with who we play with, because the way that we've the style of play that we've come to like, it doesn't take like special people to do it. It's just that it's not of interest to everyone. And when we play this style, we really really enjoy it, and kind of I can't feel like I could never go back. And so like joining just like a game at a game shop to me sounds like one of the worst. Like put a gun to my head. Like I'd rather do anything else than that. Yeah,
it's never been a good experience for me.
Yeah.
I've done it a couple times, and it's never been fun.
We're a different generation, though. We're like more like the online generation. We'll do like Discord games and stuff like that.
Right.
So it's something we can't really imagine because it's almost a thing that's been lost. It's like something from like an older generation, and they made it work somehow. I've heard plenty of stories of like West March's games that went on for like a decade plus, and they were great. But
but this is the other thing though, is I've talked to people about their games sometimes where they're like, oh yeah, this is the best game like ever, and they describe it to me and I'm like, that sounds terrible.
It is really interesting. I think those types of play really have become very recessive genes in the in the gaming genome. They sort of were. It seems like they were prevalent and maybe the majority in the early days, those halcyon years of when things were still being formulated. But I've never met anyone in real life who actually has experience with that. I only hear about them online from online people and podcasts.
Well, I'm in an extra weird position because I'm Dutch and there's not really like a gaming culture here, at least the places where I grew up. So I never really had like a real life game until I visited America once for like a month and I got to play like 3.5 for like a month, and that was great. That was like literally the first time I ever got to play D&D. So all my games are literally just online. So I am like missing like this part of the culture that like I just didn't have so.
Well, I'm running two D&D games. One is like a rules cyclopedia / basic fantasy role-playing game hybrid that's in the same world as my Advanced Dungeons and Dragons first edition game. They're just in different cities, spread out from each other. And it so far has been cool. These two groups it's not, I guess, West March's style, but these two groups haven't interact with each other. They probably will never interact with each other. They're so far apart. But for my own sanity, I do have like an in-game calendar, and I keep track of like this adventuring party went this many days into the future, and then this party is this many days into the future, and I try and keep them synced up. There's also the OSR method of 1 time, but like as you said, my gripe with that is it seems cool. It seems really neat to always have an always on game, but I have a 3-year-old. Like I don't have time to be answering texts from like my players about what they want to do constantly and adjuditing that.
Right.
So that's why I have not implemented
that. Sounds exhausting.
Yeah, that doesn't sound fun.
It sounds interesting in a way, but not necessarily feasible. Like there's a lot of ideas I didn't think about that, or I imagine there are some really interesting insights you'd run into doing that style of game, even for a very limited amount of time. But
I mean, for that style of game, like does that even need to be a role playing game? Like just go play Rust or something.
Right.
There are video games that do that.
Diplomacy. Like a board game. You can do something that way.
It's like I love role-playing games, but not everything fits into being a role-playing game, Well,
I think what they're doing is they're leaning into the wargaming, the wargame culture that started D&D. Original Dungeons and Dragons. When you're reading the 3 little brown books, first book it says, under the scope of the game, it says this is a game for 1 referee and up to 50 players.
Yeah,
and it's like.
God.
I can barely handle 4. Let alone 50.
But like that was the context, because have you guys ever seen have you watched the Secrets of Blackmore documentary?
Not yet. I heard about it recently, and that's on my list.
Yeah, I haven't.
You guys should check it out. But that's how they did their games, though. They have these massive war games, and then they'd kind of zoom in. They're like, our generals are going to go into town, and they want to get information about the other side's army. So now they're doing this role playing element in their war game, and they zoom back out, have these massive battles, and like everything's they're calling in the documentary. They're saying like they're calling up Dave Arneson about like, I want my troops to move here and do this and sabotage X,
That
Y,
sounds
Z,
exactly like diplomacy.
Yeah.
Which is fine. Not exactly the experience that I am looking to
No, me either.
take part in.
And a slight tangent kind of related to that. When I was in middle school, a buddy of mine and I were obsessed with Axis and Allies, just absolutely obsessed. We put so many hours into playing that game, the board game. And we got this idea to run a game where we have 2 boards going and you can only see your own troops. And so you're going into like combat blind, and it sounded really cool, and it didn't work at all. It was horrible.
I think you needed a referee. Is what
Yeah.
you needed. Like, you needed. Yeah, I just did a video on Strategos, which is a game from 1880 that influenced D&D.
Yeah.
And that was a game where there was 3 boards. So there was a board for team 1 and a board for team 2, and then the referee had his own board that had everything on it, so he could adjudicate what was happening.
Yeah.
So it probably would have worked if you'd done that, but then that's a third person. That's more work. Who wants to referee a Axis and Allies game?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it makes no sense.
Some weird drunken Victorian guy apparently. So
Yeah.
Yes. A different time.
Yeah.
Different time.
Well, it's not like they had
I mean-
TV or anything. They had nothing to do all day. So hey, I'm gonna referee this battleship game.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll be honest, I like wargaming too. Like I play bolt action and stuff like that. So to me, like leaning into the war game thing does appeal to me. I do enjoy that. I do like I use like the mass combat rules in the rule cyclopedia, for example, because it kind of calculates everything into a single rule. And I'll use that for like peripheral battles that are going on that the players aren't involved with. And when the players are involved, okay, now it's time to like
Zoom in and we'll do the standard combat.
Standard combat, or even like let's lead some armies. I'm a big GM where like I'm all about the players leading hirelings and employees into the dungeon or onto the battlefield and leading troops. You kind of need it for AD&D 1E at least. We had lots of near TPKs until the guys realized it's only 1 gold a month to hire a footman. Maybe I should.
Yeah.
Maybe I should hire. Maybe I should hire some of these guys.
Yeah.
So,
See,
but I
I'm
like
weird.
that. I like that part.
I'm weird. I'm getting more grognardy like these last year or so. I'm getting more OSR, but I still can't really bring myself to do the whole wargaming thing. I like just being the sellsword who goes into dungeons and fights orcs and stuff like that. I don't even really like having hirelings with me. I just want to be like a small crew of adventurers who do shit and survive by their wits and their skill and maybe some luck. I don't want like 20 people following me carrying my loot. So let alone lead an army. So I don't know. Maybe I'll get there someday, but I'm not really quite there yet.
I think. Oh, go ahead.
Well, it adds some simulation elements to it it's a taste thing. I think the hobby was originally rooted in like a simulation game with role playing elements added, like tacked on top of it. That seems to be like what OD&D was. Seems to be even what early BX was, and AD&D first edition is as well. When you read these rules, again, my guys were not surviving until. I mean, they were making stupid choices though too.
I mean that's always the case.
I mean, they might have been able to get by without hirelings if they hadn't been so stupid. But
right,
it's another point. The hirelings allow you to kind of be a little more risky and make stupid choices.
Right.
But I think the origin of the hobby was in that sort of simulationist thing where might get a little bit of a accounting and that's not for everyone. Totally get that. But for me, I've kind of grown to enjoy that because I came from very much very story gamer, railroady DM. And so I've just kind of swung completely the opposite direction, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of hit a point probably when I was about 20 where I was doing the railroady sort of thing. And it got to a point where I had players that started breaking my game every single session. It was just oh, hey, here's something interesting happening right here. And they're like, cool, we're literally going to go the opposite way. And so it was I had kind of this almost kind of crisis where I was just holy shit, am I really bad at this? And it really I just was okay, whatever happens, I'm just going to roll with it. And
Yeah, it's
Gonna have to start
exhausting
making
trying
stuff.
to have everything coded,
Yeah,
right?
it's
And doomed
completely
to
exhausting. Yeah.
Well, that's why the old school play where you literally have a hex map, you do reaction walls, and you do random encounters and stuff. That stuff is like it's almost very freeing when you come from that more like story
Yeah.
game or railroad, because it's not just roll with it, it's roll forward. So like literally random events will just like spring out of the dice, and you can like run with it, and it'll turn into like these cool little role play events, and like random stories can just pop up from just like a dice roll, and like all of a sudden they're on a quest to get a magic sword that you weren't planning for. And yeah, like I don't know, that stuff is fun.
That's something, again, like I said, I've been just like consuming pundits videos like crazy. He said something, I don't know if he said this recently or if I just watched one of his videos recently, but essentially he was talking about, I think it was in context of Lion and Dragon, and like history being kind of the basis for your game. And in history, like history has randomness. Like weird things happen that you don't expect. And if you want to have a very long running game, which I don't always necessarily want that, sometimes I like doing something that's like, I know this is going to be like three episodes or whatever, and then everybody's going to die, or it will resolve itself somehow. But if you do want to have kind of a long game, you kind of have to rely on some of that. And I have been very guilty in the past of doing things like overland travel. Like it's just like skip that, like
montage.
Montage. But I'm looking back now and being like, there is a place for random encounters there and making things interesting, and it can take the game in those unexpected directions. It's just that a lot of the games that I have played and run in the last 10 years or so have been generally like modern games, and it's like it's in a city, and so overland travel might be like a 15-minute car ride. You don't necessarily need random encounters for that.
I have very few random encounters when I drive, so.
Well, that's why it's nice to have settings like cyberpunk and like some post-apocalypse setting, because that car ride might end up with you getting ambushed at a checkpoint by like bandits with AK-47s. So that makes it more interesting.
Sure.
But that randomness, I did. John and me, we did some quick let's plays to play Scarlet Heroes, which is like basically like a solo or 1v1 game. And those random events, like they were great. Like I got like a quest to go to like this farm to talk to this farmer. I talked to the farmer, everything went well. So I started heading back to town. John rolled for a weather event. An awful storm happened. I had to like go back to the farm to take shelter. I ended up staying the night. And then he did like a random encounter roll, and all of a sudden like 7 ogres showed up to attack the farm. And I was like a level 1 fighter by myself. I'm like, I'm not gonna fight 7 ogres. So it ended up with me just like sheltering with the farmer and his family in like the root cellar while these ogres are like tearing apart the farm and like all this stuff. And it was like this really cool like little roleplay event, and it was just entirely born out of like the random dice. So
the feeling I
purposely went into that with this showing just to show like I can run a game with 0 prep. All I need is a map and some good tables. I don't know if you guys have checked this out. You can get this on Drive-Thru RPG.
Not yet. I watched your. I think you made a review of that, right?
I've been doing a lot of solo games in it because this is my solo gaming game right here. And if you want to like totally free your mind from,
is this your product or is this a?
No, this is from Kevin Crawford, Stars Without Numbers, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
He's a master of tables.
Brother here has a question.
Question, Matt. If you love Lion and Dragon, have you ever thought about trying the new version of 6th edition Pendragon? I haven't tried any editions of Pendragon yet, and Nick has said that he wants
on the list.
One of the kind of pinnacle games that we want to do is like the ultimate game of Pendragon.
Great Pendragon campaign.
Yeah,
I was actually watching a video.
Nice.
Earlier this evening. Who was it? Wiley Muffin on YouTube. They used a few videos recently about Pendragon, but he was going through the different editions and the changes and the source books for it. We will see how Chaosium handles 6th edition. I am tentatively hopeful, but I have my concerns. Hopefully they are unfounded. But yeah, that's definitely on the list, and that is a game I absolutely would want to do in person. Certainly first.
Yeah,
in person.
I know. That's the thing, is that like we've done a lot of, like, most of my gaming. That's not true. I mean, like, maybe half of my gaming while I was in New York was in person, and the other half, and then through now, has all been online until I just started running this game of Lion and Dragon like a week and a half ago. And you do lose something online. It's like you get the advantage of, like, you can find the kinds of people who are into the games you like, but, you know, talking over each other on the mic, there's something that's absolutely lost, and it's much better to do
agreed.
those experiences in person.
I prefer in person as well. I mean, I use Foundry, and Foundry's great. We talked about this before, but there's a point where, like, there's so much automation where you sort of feel like I might as well just play a video game.
Play a video game, yeah. Why
with
not?
friends.
Yeah,
You know,
And there's nothing wrong with
that's-
that.
That's where it's
I like
going.
video games.
Yeah, I like video games. I have tons of ideas about tabletop games from video games.
yeah. Crafty's recommending Crawford. I think you guys would really like.
Yeah.
You
I
really like
thought about
Crawford's
getting
stuff.
Stars Without Number, and I still want to.
I think I just got the PDF of Worlds Without Number,
Yeah, I was looking
which
at
I think
that
is his
as well.
fantasy one.
I'd like to get both.
Yeah.
because I'm curious about
You
that.
can use it for anything. I think you can use it for like post-apocalypse, for like any like all that stuff. Worlds Without Numbers is like really great.
Yeah, isn't it sort of like fifth edition, but you have a kind of a skill-based system as well? That's like a little more like Traveler. It's like mixing D&D and Traveler together.
That's kind of where I got that idea from Atomic Punk. This is pretty much just BX. I don't have Worlds Without Number or Stars Without Number, but this is pretty much BX. But you do skill rolls on 2d8. So Traveler's 2d6.
Yeah.
This is 2d8. So,
And there's mechanics
I
to make your character a bit more powerful, so you know it's
Yeah.
suitable for being just one dude and one GM.
Yeah.
yeah, and
I like 2d8 with exploding dice.
I don't know if I don't think it has exploding dice, but I love the skill system in this. It's like background skills. So like you roll a percentile dice and you'll get like you get. I feel like this is the perfect skill system for like D&D, where you get a background and it's like, oh, if you're a cleric and you roll charlatan, like you're a cleric, but maybe before you were a cleric, you were like a charlatan of some kind.
Yeah.
So now when you do skill checks, you can ask the GM, or if you're solo gaming, you just determine it yourself, and you're just like, I'm interacting with this NPC and I want to convince them of something. I used to be a charlatan. Can I use some of my con skills as a charlatan to sort of convince this guy to my side and do the 2d8 skill check? And the GM would be like, sure. So I love the way that works, because you get these like, you have like 3 skills on your character sheet, but they're kind of broad and applicable in lots of different situations. And I just think that's for me, for like BX old school D&D, if you're going to add a skill system on top, that's the way to go.
Yeah,
which I quite like.
I do like games that have some sort of background mechanic. I mean, for the Cyberpunk game we launched, I guess a week and a half ago now. Talking about random tables and how do those get used? We got a lot of interesting. Well, I got a lot of interesting material in the different life path options that were rolled. Fantastic things which would not necessarily have come into play.
It was
otherwise.
And it was pretty interesting too, because it was also like the character. This is not going to spoil anything about our game or my character or anything like that. But when I rolled up my stats, I rolled really high, and then when I rolled up my life path, nothing bad happened to me.
Yeah.
So I was just like, all right, I guess I had a silver spoon. Like,
which
this
is
is
great.
awesome.
That leans into the
And I was making a corporate. So
I mean, that makes sense then,
yeah.
Just the golden boy.
Yeah, and I was also, after I rolled up that life path, I was like, I expect that bad things are probably going to start happening to me very quickly.
Yeah.
I love life path games. That's why I like Classic Traveler and stuff like that. I like having that sort of. It makes character creation, like Classic Traveler. When you're playing Classic Traveler at the table, every time I've done it, like people, you tell people like, hey, you can die in character creation.
Yeah.
And they're like, that sounds terrible. And I'm like, no, but it's actually a lot of fun.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
I was watching one of Shauner's. He had a video today. He was going through someone's live play of Alien RPG, and he was.
Oh yeah, Lord Mateus. Yeah. He
was talking about. I think he mentioned Traveler 2nd edition. I guess is the one he uses.
Mongoose second edition, yeah.
Mongoose second edition. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Shauna is
That's,
definitely my number one resource for traveler opinions, since I don't have any. I outsource them all to Shauna right now.
Yeah.
you can come to me. I got him. I'm the opposite. And I'll say this as someone who has been an artist working on Mongoose second edition Traveler since 2015. I prefer Classic Traveler.
Oh, really?
Okay.
I don't know. I just like it a lot more. I like Mongoose 2E is easier in that every skill is a flat +1 to your 2d8 roll. So you're always in no matter what edition of Traveler except for T5. I'm not super familiar with T5 because that's a mess. But you're rolling 2d6 and you're trying to roll 8 or more, and you're going to have different modifiers that are going to make that easier or harder to do.
Yeah.
In Classic Traveler, like if you have like Forward Observer, for instance, where you're trying to like bomb some kind of location with artillery from orbit or something like that, your target number is 11. It changes to 11, and you get all these special modifiers for just having a skill level of 1. So it's not just this flat +1. Whereas in more modern Traveler, Mongoose Traveler, it's like roll 2d6 +1. And to me, it almost feels like in Classic Traveler, the skills are like proto feats almost, which I kind of don't like feats, but I like the way it works in Classic Traveler, where like each skill is very different. They don't all function the same. Like some skills are like you get a +2 on your 2d8 roll for every level of skill that you have in it. So you have, this skill 2, that's a +4 to the 2d8 roll or 2d6 roll. So I feel like that sort of it lost a little bit of customizability. I don't know what the word would be. Customizability is that a word? It lost some of that in just making it made it easier by making everything a flat +1, but it's lost some of its
some of the flavor,
some of its flavor and nuance, in my opinion.
I definitely like maintaining the flavor when and where possible. We'll have to try both.
I want to take a step back a moment to like the previous topic, because I was thinking about like your golden boy corpo guy, and that you rolled like really well, and he's got nothing bad happened to him, and then it's like, well, now something bad is going to happen to him. Well, that's like an example of like random rolls basically turning into like a great role-playing opportunity, because I'm picturing it like that Keanu Reeves movie Johnny Mnemonic, where he's like the high-powered like corporate courier. He's like very cocky, like he did all these like high-level jobs for the corporates, and all of a sudden he's like in the slums being hunted by Yakuza. He's dying from like a brain leak and stuff like that. And like I'm just kind of picturing that sort of character, and that's like a great role-playing opportunity that was born just out of you rolling your dice and stuff. So
totally. And I mean, like even with coming up with like the character backstory, I mean, all of that comes out of the life path, but it's vague. It's vague ideas that you then get to run with. Which I did, which was great. And I think I probably sent like 3 paragraphs to Nick the day before our game, being like, let me just like explain like, okay, who's the foster parent figure, and like what, like figuring out all the details. But it was not only like great ammunition for just creating a character. I like fast character creation. Like doing really deep character creation can be very fun, but I just don't have as much time as I used to. And like, I want to get in and actually play a game. So this, it really does just offload the heavy lifting. It's great. Yeah. And so like, that's what I've said is like, I can definitely see where like, there's some ways in which I run my games where, random tables and assuming they're of good quality, can take off the heavy lifting and give you really, really interesting ideas.
Yeah. And the important thing about the life path and any good life path system is whatever you end up rolling, they don't jar with each other. You could have rolled any combination of any of those results on any of those tables, and it would have made logical sense. And my feeling right now with regard to random tables in play is that they're a spice to be added to assist when necessary, not the building blocks or the foundation. And the randomness of any table, however I'm going to use it, it's helpful so long as it doesn't break the logic of what cause and effect makes sense here. Because you can get really interesting things. And I think, so long as that happens, then it's a good spice to add occasionally, as circumstances, either when you're doing overland travel or if you've been in any one place for a very long time. Okay, let's see what happens, because the world is a living, breathing world with multitudes of different people, creatures. Let's throw something interesting in here, or at least unexpected in here, and see how that shapes things.
Mr. Max Boyven says, well, that wasn't all of a sudden. That was a character choice. He took a risk by overloading his memory, of course. But he started with a static background, and that's the same as with your cyberpunk character. You roll up the background, and that's like his life up until he's like 25, whatever. And then you take over and you start making choices, and that might put the character in a bad situation. And
yeah, of course. And I mean that's like backstories and. I mean, like everything in like a good setting for me is like it's just a premise. It's a jumping off point for wherever things are going to go.
Yeah.
I don't think about, or really even as a GM want much more than a premise.
Yeah, I know. Like I don't want to consume your giant lore tome.
Yeah.
My view is if it doesn't fit in a tweet, I don't want to read it.
That's great.
Yeah,
I like that. Send it to tweet it to me. You can't start a thread about it
if it's too long for 250 characters, whatever. I don't want to read it.
That actually just reminded me of something from like I don't know, back in like 2004 when the New World of Darkness came out, which is no longer new and no longer called the New World of Darkness. They had this like blue core book, and it was like this game of basically just like dark mystery. It was the foundation for vampire and werewolf and whatnot. But this is how you make mortal characters. There was a thread on the White Wolf forums. I can't remember what it was called. It was called like it was not Mysterious Happenings, but it was basically like people, they would just write a tweet length description of something weird and creepy, and it was just it became this giant thread of plot hooks, of just like like one or two sentences, and I built entire games off of those things. Like it was awesome.
I love lists of story hooks, plot hooks. It's great.
I did that in my first attempt at like an OSR modern game. I have like the last chapter is just like a whole list of like little plot hooks, starting from like a World War I vampire like thing and ending with like I think like the Giant of Kandahar. Have you guys ever heard of that conspiracy theory? It's like basically there's this story going around that the Special Forces team, they ran into like a giant up in the mountains in Afghanistan, and I basically turned that into like a plot hook. But it's all just like little blurbs going from World War I to modern age for like stuff you can do using my system, and people seem to really enjoy that. So I need to do more of that.
Yeah, nice. I love that sort of stuff too, because it's just like short, vague things that like kind of like kindle your imagination, and that's what you want, is like you want the seed of an idea that you can like run with, and then when you bring whatever that seed is to your players, they're gonna change it, and everything's gonna go in some weird direction that nobody knew.
It's gonna flow
it's just
really,
awesome.
really weird, but really interesting.
Yeah,
I always like doing things where the players like is the I don't know, is the nobleman actually like a vampire or something like that, and you're like, I didn't plan that, but you know, that's
maybe.
cooler than that's cooler than what I planned, so we're gonna go with that, sure.
And that's an interesting thing, not to, I guess, segue into a totally different topic if we don't want to go down a rabbit hole. Maybe we do, but there was another, I think, discussion, another turning of the cycle of RPG commentary about fudging.
Yeah,
I definitely understand and agree with. You generally shouldn't fudge things, but I will say for something like that where there's an aspect of the world that isn't directly right now being engaged with, something that's woven into the fabric. If I have a different idea, because maybe I've spent more time thinking about it during play, it actually makes more sense to sort of shift it this way, or even perhaps if, like you said, if the players are presenting or discussing amongst themselves different ideas as to, is it this, is it that, who done it, who's the man behind the curtain. I don't see any real issue with changing things, and I have done in the past, shifting things. Maybe this person wasn't, to your example, a vampire, but maybe.
Oh yeah, I
he
mean,
is
I've done
now.
stuff like that as well, where it's like I have the idea of what is going on in the world, and then all of a sudden, like something much cooler could have been going on.
Well,
Yeah.
and
that's
that
not
is
really-
now
And
I
what
guess
has
that's
been
not
happening.
die fudging. There's no die rules.
Yeah, that's not
Yeah.
really fudging in the way that the argument usually is about, which is literally just about the dice. It's like, oh, I actually rolled a 6, but I'm going to say that I rolled a 7 because
Right.
that's what I need to actually make this roll.
Right.
So that's
Yeah,
what,
which is
the
like,
whole,
why did
yeah,
you roll the die in
yeah.
the first place?
But like,
then?
no,
Right.
changing
Yeah,
story
agreed.
stuff on the fly because something you just came up with something. It's like, oh, that's actually way cooler. That's like a way better twist. Like that.
Mhm.
That's fine. I think that's actually the mark of a good GM.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
I agree.
different than like I don't track monster hit points and I just let all the players get their cool thing in and then the monster dies. Like that's
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
sorry.
stupid.
Get
Yeah,
out of
yeah,
the
yeah.
hobby.
yeah,
Yeah.
Big agree.
Yeah.
gatekeep. Yeah,
More.
I'm gonna go back to this comment here. Poncho Goblin's making a suggestion to you guys. I don't know if you've
Yeah.
read X.
We talked about it in our last Thursday, or I mentioned it in our last Thursday live stream. I saw a few people mentioning Adventure. It's Adventure Conquer King, right?
Yeah.
If I'm understanding it, yeah. Definitely something I really want to check out and also consume
yeah.
at some point.
Bye.
DM James made a lot of videos.
There's a
talking
second
about it.
edition coming out. I think it's like pretty much almost done. So
Oh,
you
wow.
should
Yeah,
probably
You got to
wait.
buy both now.
Yeah, I actually have the first edition, but yeah,
I'm waiting for second. I don't have first, but I'm probably
Yeah.
gonna
Yeah,
back.
I'll
the,
wait
the
for the
second
next
edition
one then.
Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Yeah, that and I've heard a lot of good things about Hyperborea, or if I'm not mistaken,
yeah.
it used to
Yeah.
be Astonishing Swordsman and Sorcerers.
Hyperborea is awesome. It's basically kind of like a first edition with a little bit of second edition thrown in, but like
Okay.
set in this very like weird fantasy kind of Conan plus like Dying Earth like type setting,
Mhm.
and it's like just randomly like you'll just randomly stumble across like an ancient spaceship.
Nice.
But
I do
meanwhile, you're
love the
just a
Dying Earth.
Viking with a sword, and it's like stuff like that, and it's cool. So, I think
Okay,
you
I'll have
would
to
probably enjoy
try
it.
not to miss the Kickstarter.
Yeah,
Well, I love Conan, so I'm definitely
Love
down.
Conan. I love
Yeah,
I just
and-
got
and-
the I guess a couple weeks ago or a month ago, I had forgot I kickstarted the DCC Dying Earth.
Mhm.
I totally forgot I gave them any money. Apparently, I must have given them a lot because I
got that.
got a lot in the mail.
yeah.
Well,
It
that's kind of a fun
must be
surprise,
nice
though.
being that rich to forget you spend it.
Yeah.
Or just bad with
Yeah. Or just irresponsible.
Yeah, that's-
nice.
I don't
Yeah,
know if there's a
so
comment I
many
missed.
so many different games which are interesting. And I will say, since Matt and I started this project, I can't remember if we talked about it on one of the live streams or the episodes, or if we spoke offline. It's very heartening for me to see different interesting new products come out, because I was very much of the opinion, even a
Yeah.
couple months ago when we started this the project, that I have no interest in purchasing anything new coming out. Everything new seems
It's slop.
like
It's
absolute slop. It's injected with politics, and ultimately, I already have too many games as it is. I'm just
Yeah.
not going to buy anything I want to do from this point out. I already have the resources to do it, so I'm pleased to be somewhat proven wrong here, and I guess
fact
get a little
checked,
bit
if
more
you will.
white-pilled,
Yeah.
about the hobby. A little bit.
Yeah, it's crazy when you get outside of like Watsy's
Yeah.
Watsy's walled garden. It's like, whoa, there's
Yeah.
this whole big wide world out here of interesting stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, I may
know
not
what
have
you
the
could buy.
there you
Yeah.
go. But there's all
Noted.
this stuff out here, and that's interesting, and that I want to play, and I don't have the money or the time to even get to it all. Like it is
Yeah.
it is a good white pill, I think, to see that the hobby, like if Watsy were to disappear tomorrow, I think the hobby would be okay.
Oh, the hobby would be
Probably
fine.
I think
It'd
the
probably
hobby
be
would
better.
Hobby would probably
Yeah.
flourish.
Yeah, it'd probably be way better.
Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, I guess that that kind of was my perspective as well. Was just that like outside of the small corner of YouTube talking about these smaller indie games, like RPGs, it's just D&D on YouTube. Like that is all it is. D&D 5th edition, and it's like I have not had any interest. Even when that game came out, like I read the basic rules and I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting. Like feels better than 4th edition, like for sure. But it just did not grab me at all. And to think that like this thing that I think is basically fairly vanilla is like what everybody is into was really kind of depressing, because there were a lot of games that I grew up on that were a lot more interesting to me than the sort of kind of we've talked about this previously on our podcast, where like D&D it doesn't really have like an assumed setting other than like fantasy world. Like if you get the player's handbook, it's just kind of like make something up, you know, like you have all these different furry species you can wear as a costume, and now you spawn in the world, and there's not really kind of like a strong setting or opinion there. And I like games with very strong opinions or very strong settings.
An identity, a clear artistic
identity.
motif.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
And I feel like the
like
WotC
a
stuff
GURPS.
really doesn't have an identity.
You don't want just a GURPS core book or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. I've never played GURPS. I know I've been told and I've forgotten. I don't even know off the top of my head what the die mechanic is. It seems like it seems terrible. Everything I've heard about it, I've looked at some of the books briefly that I've seen here and there, and it doesn't look like my cup of tea. And yet, it seems like several different really engaging fiction worlds have actually come out of GURPS. Yeah. I read the Malazan Book of the Fallen books, and I know they came from GURPS. I know a couple other like novel series or other beloved settings have come from that. So I am, for as miserable as it seems like it would be, I do wonder if there's actually something there that, if despite all the seeming misery, you can make something that fleshed out.
Like Liero has
GURPS. Sorry, go ahead.
This is the best advice for how to use GURPS. Is the best way to play GURPS is to buy a setting book and use it with another system. Because the GURPS setting books are really good. They are really well done. They're very insightful, especially the historical settings. They're very good. I'm not a fan of the GURPS system myself either. So
and I also have no desire to autistically buy 900 different books. I got to complete the set.
Yeah, the shelf must be complete.
See, I'm kind of the opposite. I love settings. I love a good setting, but ultimately, I'm always gonna like use my own setting. I love making up my own worlds and homebrewing. So I write my stuff kind of like setting neutral, and I still have like a tight focus. So like this book is like pretty much just like all like 21st or like maybe 20th century like modern. Like, you know, I don't like really like settings where it's like, oh, you can use this for fantasy or for sci-fi or whatever, because then
I don't like that
stuff
either.
gets too loose. I still like a specific like vision, but I do like settingless. So like you can use, like I like the idea of like using this. Like one day I'm gonna do like a John Wick type game, and the next day I'm gonna like take like an old module and just be like, oh, it's Keep on the Borderlands, but now everyone has AK-47s. Like so I like stuff like that. So.
That sounds great. It means I could finish that module quicker.
Yeah, but the enemies also have AK-47s. So
now I don't.
I'm of the opinion that like rules imply settings. So like when you read Classic Traveler, for instance, there is no setting in it, but you get the feeling when you're reading the rules.
Yeah, it's an implied setting.
The career paths that you have are all military paths. You know, like so this is probably a very militaristic setting where military service is required because there's a draft. So you know, there's all these assumptions that you can make about Traveler, even if you don't feel like using the Third Imperium, the official setting, that it implies, but it is loose in toolkit enough to where you can use it for you could run a Star Trek game
Yeah.
in Classic Traveler, and it would work just fine.
Yeah.
So I like stuff like that personally, where there's the rules kind of limit what you can and can't, what it can and can't be applied to, because I think different settings will need different rules. So
I agree.
Definitely.
I agree.
The funny thing is that a bunch of like famous sci-fi settings were actually born out of Traveler campaigns. Like apparently Firefly was originally a Traveler campaign that Joss Whedon ran. I heard,
cool.
I think somebody told me that The Expanse was originally a Traveler campaign until and then they turned it into like their own like system. And there's like a bunch of like famous like sci-fi settings from movies and TV shows that were born out of Traveler. So I think that's like a cool little thing.
That is cool. It makes me want to, like I was saying with well, maybe not with GURPS, but it makes me at the very least interested to see what is there that maybe I'm missing.
Yeah.
What fertile ground do these systems offer to make something come alive, either of my own design or an established setting. I kind of oscillate. I'll do something. I'll run a game in a setting or a world I've created, but it also will go back to evocative settings or franchises that I'm really invested in.
Yeah, I guess that's the thing, because I really do like coming up with stuff on my own as well. Like I love that. Working on a setting for a game that the game that me and Nick met each other in many years ago, starting to work on that again. But at the same time, it's like I like when a setting basically is just like a great, it's just full of premises and plot hooks. It's like that has already taken so much of the heavy lifting off of me,
Yeah.
Like, and I really like that. I like taking ideas from other people, that's
Sure.
I think that's like every novel that's ever been written, every painting that's ever been made, it's a ripoff of someone previous,
Yeah.
It's like
Yep.
not a ripoff, but and emulation and or taking the same ingredients and making something new from it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, that's how I use existing settings. I'll just take what I like from it and then add my own stuff that I like better.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, it's Forgotten Realms, but the dwarves are like weird mole people, like stuff like that. So
It's Forgotten Realms, but it doesn't suck.
yeah.
And even if you're not changing the setting in an explicit way, at least for me, if I'm playing in Star Trek, let's say I'm running a Star Trek game, I don't want to. We're not playing Picard and Troy and Worf on the Enterprise D and doing the same adventures that we saw in the series.
Yeah.
I might be more interested in doing something that I haven't really seen a lot of, that hasn't gotten a lot of attention. I feel like the Andorians are cool as hell, and I don't. Doesn't seem like they get any love in any of the series. Okay, maybe I flesh things out about what's going on with them. They're one of the founder species of the Federation.
Yeah.
And ice people are cool. So you're still world building. It's impossible not to, even if you're using an established setting or a world.
Yeah,
That's why.
Games,
I'll still get John.
one of my favorite games is West End Games Star Wars D6. I have the first edition.
I'm actually
he's been
starting
telling me about it.
Yeah.
First, I'm playing in a West End Games Star Wars system. I'm really excited.
It's
for it. I've
fun.
never played it.
I like to do one shots in it. It's kind of, it becomes like in my BX game when not everyone can make it. It's like it's easy to get out those books and just make up because we're all so familiar with Star Wars with these franchises.
Yeah.
That it's easy to just get out those books and like, all right, pick a character, make a character, and let's just we're in this part of the galaxy now, and let's just make something up. And like I'll just make up something on the spot because like I grew up watching Star Wars.
I know, yeah. The familiarity that the players, everybody has with the material is going to make the game just come alive instantly.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's a big galaxy. It's a sci-fi setting with a big galaxy, so you can just like carve out your own chunk
Yeah.
of it and
Stop
just make up
visiting
your own stuff.
Tatooine.
Yeah, like
It's
like
meant
make
to
up
be
your own
impactful.
planet. You know, it's like it's the outer,
Yeah.
it's this the system in the outer rim where everything takes place, and you just make up your own shit. But meanwhile, you know, the Jedi's are still there, the Sith, you know, the rebels, like or whatever you want to include. But you know, it's at the same time, it's your own creation. So I think that's cool.
But the base level familiarity with the setting is what gives you the confidence to very rapidly create something new because
definitely.
you know what's going to fit within that genre.
I part of me really wants to at some point run a Star Wars game on our channel because I have very strong opinions about Star Wars, and I would
I do too.
gut it, and I would do a
good stuff.
Tijuana facelift on that setting, and I can hear the reeing now from all the people. And
I've actually had a Star Wars campaign in my head for like the last 2 years now. I just need the chance to like run it and probably find a system, maybe West End Star Wars. But it's like it has to do with the cloning and all that stuff. I'm looking forward to actually doing that someday. But we were doing West End Star Wars, but we were doing play by post on the Guilded server,
out.
and it fizzled out completely. So we need to get back to that in like actual as an actual voice chat thing. I think.
Yeah. Try and get all those everyone in that like involved. They were like trying to. They have their own ship, you know, and they land on this planet. They meet some spice dealers, and they're like, "Hey, you want to get this stuff through some Imperial space?" And they're like, "Sure." And then the drug dealer was like, "Before you go, like, need some help taking out some competition in town, and you guys interested?" And so they're like scouting out the area, and then it just fizzled out. I was like, "Wow."
Well, everyone got busy, and then by the time we all got back to it, we just like were like,
Yeah, you know.
yeah, that can happen. Sadly.
Yeah, that's the thing with online games is it's much easier for people to drop out than it is if you're all in person.
I'm gonna put projectile weapons in Star Wars.
The Sand People already do that, so
yeah,
that's true.
And I also, you know, speaking of like predefined settings, I've been really digging the One Ring Second Edition. I've been like really diving into that.
That's
game.
Good to hear. I don't know anything about it other than it's happening.
It's a pretty sweet system. There's some things that I don't like about it that I feel like it's missing that it needs. Like I'd love to have like, and maybe it's the old school me in it. It's like I would like a number of appearing for monsters. Like when the players encounter something, like how many of these should appear.
Yeah.
Like you just give me a guideline. I don't even need to roll. Just tell me like there should be 5 to 12 orcs. You know, like how many should there be? And it doesn't really give you that, which is annoying, but it's a really cool system. And so it's one of those things where it's like, if you're really, I'm love Tolkien and Lord of the Rings. So it's like,
it's nice that something modern has come through that hasn't shit on it. So
it's great. It's very respectful of his work. I rather enjoy it. I give it a big recommend. I know people like first edition over
the
this
aesthetic for first edition was amazing.
Yeah. It doesn't have spiders in it. That bothered me. I need my spiders. I need my big spiders in a Tolkien game. But it's one of those things too, where it's like Star Wars, where, you know, I could bust that book out and probably do a decent job of running just on the spot because I'm so familiar with the material and I feel comfortable doing it.
Yeah.
More so than even like my own homebrew setting, probably, which is probably kind of sad, but you know.
We actually did a recorded session of is it Middle Earth Adventures? That's
Adventures
called, right?
in Middle Earth.
Oh yeah, well I almost said it right, but that's like that's like the out of print 5e version of Lord of the Rings, and it's actually really good. It actually improves 5e because it makes it way more deadly and gritty. And like if you just like strip out all the Lord of the Rings like thematic stuff and just run it as like a generic fantasy game, it would probably be better than normal 5e. But we had a lot of fun with that. But we're probably gonna switch to One Ring second edition when we pick that back up again.
Is Modifius doing who's doing that?
Free League.
Oh, Free League. I still don't fully understand what the distinction is between Modifius and Free League.
Free League's in Europe. I don't know where Modifius is.
I think they're British, English.
Oh, okay. Free League's like in Sweden or Netherlands. or
Yeah,
something
they're like
that.
in one of those Nordic
Norway.
hellholes.
I think one of them is like a publisher and one's a designer or something.
Yeah, speaking
yeah.
of like fixing 5e, I still haven't gotten my hands on the physical books yet, but Studio Agate did
yeah.
Fate Forged,
Fate
I think,
Forged.
which is basically like their version of 5e, and it has a lot of different styles of like mechanical flavor on it. So if you want to run like a really grim, deadly game, like they have a label on the rules that'll say like, this is what you do for a gritty game, this is what you do for like high fantasy, epic, whatever. But that studio, they made Shadows of Esteren, which is one of the games that I've been buying all the books for recently, and they have some of the highest production value that I've seen in like any RPG books, and they still have the standard prices, but the kind of like unified art style that they have in all, for each product line that they have is like incredible. And in terms of like making games, I really think that like art like makes or breaks an RPG book for me. Like
Problem is,
completely.
art is expensive.
It's expensive. Yeah, it's expensive to
Yeah.
get good art.
Yeah.
Especially if you can produce it yourself, that's great. But like neither of us is an artist.
Yeah. Well, John over there, like he's got it
Yeah.
easy. He writes his own games. He like draws the stuff for his own games, and then like he just throws it out there, and it's amazing. And meanwhile, I'm here like trying to like count every euro that I have to like get some good pictures. But
hey, use it if you got it.
yeah. But speaking of like games with like insane like production quality, what's it called? Degenesis. And like the system
Genesis
is
is
shit,
amazing.
but it's like the best art and the best layout I've ever seen. And
Just a
like,
shit game.
but meanwhile, the game's shit, and I think they're actually out of business now. But like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Spend too much on the art.
Grim Jim referred to Genesis as a beautiful idiot.
yeah,
Like, it's the equivalent of like it's that blonde bimbo who's like super hot, but there's just it's
so
just
you open a
vapid. There's-
mouth and you're like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah,
But yeah,
Yeah.
the art in Genesis is amazing. But
Yeah,
it's
our
just-
art,
I wish
art
that-
is amazing in that. Certainly Shadows of Esteren.
Oh, it's so good.
Cult, the production value on the Cult Divinity Lost, I thought was excellent.
Well, that's one thing people have said about like my stuff, which I am thankful for, that I can do the art and everything myself. Is it like there's a level of consistency because it's like
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
me, it's the same artist who did everything in the whole
Right.
book. So it's like it's not like this weird anime style 1 second and then like
Right.
super realistic painting here and then weird like 5-year-old drawing over here. You know?
Yeah.
that's
that-
why I befriended John just so I can get art at a discount.
Hey, the Galaxy Brain play.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it is really jarring though when there's like radically different art styles within the same
Yeah.
book. It's actually kind of frustrating when that happens because it absolutely takes me out of the product.
Yeah. Matt and I have talked about this at length. I know we did like an episode about it as well. But for anything that we do in the future, we want
Yeah, that's
whatever
where
it takes, not skimp on
Right.
the art. Whatever style it is, it has to be thematically appropriate to, whatever it's about. Art is hugely important. And like you were saying,
Yeah.
Matt, it totally kills my interest if the art is like trash or it's super across the board with one thing's nice and one thing is,
terrible.
it's a really
like,
tough
yeah.
thing for an RPG to come back
Yes.
from to get my interest again.
I would rather have like an RPG that's just text that's laid out very well
Yeah,
and looks
yeah,
very nice
agreed.
with no art than have a book filled with very bad art.
Yes.
See, the problem is that because, and I'm saying that as somebody who's kind of feeling attacked right now because my books have like art that's like very different styles. But the problem is, artists generally like that's when you make a book, artists take the longest.
Yeah.
And they generally only have time or like they have like other obligations to do like
Sure.
a set amount of pictures. It's like, yeah, I can do 5 pictures for you. It's like, yeah, but I need 30. So
Yeah.
you end up with
Oh,
like
no, I know,
6
you
different
have to.
artists. So
Correct. Yeah. No, I totally understand.
Yeah.
I completely
Yeah.
understand that. But it's like
Yeah.
John said though. It's like if you have like anime on one page and then like a brilliant like painting or something.
Yeah.
You know, it's like
yeah,
that.
or like
That's a
color
little too
pencil
much.
drawing,
Yeah.
like
at that
like
point,
a children's color pencil drawing.
right,
And
right. It's like at that
know.
point, like I do get that like you're gonna have different styles within books, and you can't avoid that because you like you said with the production schedules and everything like that. But at the same time, it's like you do have within your ability to select artists that
Right.
will gel together.
Yeah.
You don't have to
and the
pick
quality.
you don't have to pick the polar opposites.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
Well, as an example, like, okay, so okay, hang on, it's mirrored, so it's hard to. There we go.
There you go.
So I've got this picture, which is that's fairly like realistic, like art.
That's
and
fine.
Then, yeah, and then later on I have like some other art. Let me see if I can find a good example here. Yeah, this one is like it's a lot more. Come on, hang on, this way.
Other direction. There you go.
A little more.
It's hard. It's hard because it's all mirrored.
Yeah.
There we go. This one's like a lot more stylized, and it's definitely different, but
That's fine.
yeah,
But it's not shit art. Is I
Yeah.
think more what
Yeah.
we're talking
Yeah.
about. Like,
We went through, and unfortunately, we didn't do this on stream because we're not sure if we can
yeah,
do this.
We have to do. We have to do this.
It would be great to do this, but we went through the 5th edition Monsters Manual, just looking at the art one time, and so much of it is so bad,
Yeah.
fifth
the only
edition
really
and
good
it's
one
just
was the
all
severed
over
hand.
the place. Yeah. Yeah, the severed hand was the one piece. Was the first piece we were like, "Whoa, that's pretty cool, though."
That's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, we were like, "That's actually really good."
5e art, especially like the later stuff, is kind of a meme as far as like the drop in
Yeah.
quality, because they just get cheap Tumblr artists that they
Yeah.
basically just pay in
Yeah,
like
it's all
exposure.
Tumblr art.
Yeah. So you get
man.
like androgynous queer like centaurs instead of like
Yeah.
a cool adventurer or something. It's like
Yeah.
okay.
Max brings up an interesting way of doing it here. Like I would maybe go this route, where each
Yeah.
artist
Yes.
maybe gets a section of the book.
That's a good idea. I didn't think about that, but that's a great
Then,
idea. Certainly.
then at least those sections are consistent,
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
Well, it's also, I mean, it's like, think about, I don't know if you guys have ever read Sandman by Neil Gaiman. Like, sometimes issue to issue, they were changing artists, and the art style was radically different, but it was always good art, and it was always Sandman. So as long as like the artists can fit the tone, that makes sense. And yeah, I do think that's a good idea. If you had 6 artists, each takes a section of the book, that'd probably be the best way to go.
I have learned a lot. Just in
Yes.
this, I have learned a lot just in this last year of how to approach artists, and like which artist I'm gonna like tap again, and which I'm gonna like. Yeah. Thanks for the first book, but
Yeah.
but yeah. I mean, I kind of came into this just like as a complete amateur myself. Like I just decided to write a game, and I did it, and somehow I ended up in this industry now, and I'm still learning, and yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
you're like, I don't know. Every time you make a product, you're going to learn something new. I
Yeah.
imagine there's not some formula where you can just like, unless of course you're WotC and you can just stamp out garbage
Yeah.
over and over, and people just buy it.
well, my suggestion to you guys and anyone out there watching who maybe is in the position of like, I want to make a game, but art is expensive. What do I do? I would suggest learning all the skills that you can learn. Like everyone can learn layout. Like everyone can learn to do layout. Affinity is like $60, $70. Go buy Affinity, learn how to use it, get proficient with it, and now you don't have to pay a layout artist. You can do it yourself.
Yeah.
You know. Now you just have to. Now you've freed up a bunch of money that you'd give to a layout artist. Then you can give it to an illustrator if you really want like nice art in your book.
I mean, the other thing is like we've talked about like what are kind of the first things we're going to work on, and the other thing is to start small. I think as well is not to try and do a 200-page manual, and to start with a small product, which is kind of our plan. We've got some things cooking up, and start small, use it as a test run, and learn the lessons.
Started small. What's that like? I started with a 200-page 5e modern book, so I'm
entering in with a
listening.
splash.
Yeah.
More
and yeah,
ambitious than
and definitely, Patty. I've seen some of your art; it's actually really cool. So
He says you don't need that TBE if if you're a Dirty Mac user. Pages is free. Easy to learn.
yeah,
Well, I'm way more autistic than that, so I'll be using Emacs with org mode and LaTeX to do layout. So
I don't know. I tried doing, so my first book was Cowpunchers, my first like real book, and it was like 20 page. It was again a small thing, 20 pages of like, here's a super rules light cowboy game. And then obviously I did like a second version that was like 150 pages of the same game, just expanded on it. But like that first one, I was like, I just need to start small with something like simple. And I used Scribus, and that was just a nightmare.
yeah.
Don't use Scribus. I don't care what anyone says. Like, oh my gosh, it's so terrible. I hate it. I was just to do those 25 pages. I just wanted to kill myself.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I just got to say to Mr. Max, yes, I do use Emacs, much to the chagrin of everyone I work with.
But Affinity, for everyone else out there, Affinity's cheap and they often have sales, and I think it's better than Adobe InDesign because it's a one-time payment. You're not renting software, and it does almost everything that InDesign does.
Yeah.
So
that's
what all my books have been made in so far, and I've seen an improvement in my layout skills. Like if I look at even Atomic Punk's layout, it's very Spartan and simple. And I've been working on Obsidian and Blood, which is my Aztec game, and the layout. It's like I've leveled up like a whole bunch more than what I previously was, and it just comes with practice. And I think anyone can learn layout. So like you're only limited. You're only limited by like the access that you have to the art. And if you're not opposed to it, I would say like even using public domain art is acceptable.
Public domain art is great.
Yeah, a lot of it's amazing. I mean, it's like again, like Lion and Dragon is I think all public domain art, and it all fits. It all fits the tone of the book as well. But it's great.
Well, there's a lot of medieval art out there though. You know, when you're writing a medieval game, you have like
you have this
1,000 years of history to like.
Sure, there's not much sci-fi art.
I did Waste Runners, which was like the Stalker version, basically of Cowpunchers. I had to do. I just wrote that in like a week, I think. I had to do like free art. Well, it's very hard to find like free art of dudes in gas masks with cool guns. So you know, so
some public domain landscape art of the Dust Bowl.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing is that AI art. I don't think it's even close to replacing human artists yet. Because if you want it to do anything that has like, specific form or pose, very hard to get it to do anything. But if you need something kind of generic in a pinch, the results can be kind of good. And if you use it well, this is actually something that the Red Room has done very well. They have a bunch of different artists who provided art for this book, but they also used Midjourney and Stable Diffusion to produce some of the artwork. Like I'm almost positive that it's going to freak out.
Oh.
Yep, you can't see it. Isn't this a great picture? There's a couple of pieces that I'm like looking at. I'm almost positive that's AI art, but it's done really, really well. And especially in that book, like it's all flattened to black and white and looks, like it's, inked or vectors or something. So that I think that's going to continue to become a good set of supplemental tools for these books. It's not going to be great for things that like if you have something that needs to be like dynamic and action. It's not there yet. It's not going to accomplish that.
But for like you said, those I don't know what the terminology would be, but for a lot of RPG books have smaller pieces of art that are really just there to break up the page a little bit. That could also free up, I would imagine, some money on those big tentpole illustrations that you want. I think you definitely want quality art, especially if you're making your own races, species that are clearly very different or maybe hard to convey. With text alone, you really want that to be clear. Obviously, the cover, if you want to have any big action spread or splash page,
the problem with AI art is very polarizing, and
Yeah.
people will straight up like not buy a book if you like use AI art at all. So like
Whatever.
yeah.
Like the thing is, I think if the content is good enough, those people are liars and they will buy it.
Yeah.
There's so many people will say, oh, I'm not going to support Disney anymore. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. And without fail, almost all these people are still spending money on that stuff.
Oh, same with WotC. So yeah.
Well, I'm a.
Just look at WotC. Exactly.
Yeah.
I had Miguel on. We had Miguel on to talk about AIR because he uses it in his book, and Miguel has hired me to do. I've done a bunch of different covers for their books. So it's not like Miguel is opposed to hiring artists. He does hire artists.
Yeah.
But Miguel brought up a point I think on that stream, which was if I'm using AI art and the argument is I'm taking money away from a real artist who I
don't have money to pay any artist right now.
Exactly. Like that. I wasn't gonna. It was good. There was gonna be no art in the book,
Right?
Because I don't have money for an artist, you
Right.
know. And as an artist, I'm sympathetic. I have specific rates. I gotta put food in my kid's mouth and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I can't really budge on rates. So I get when someone's like, "Sorry, you're too expensive." Like I get it.
Yeah.
It's the way it is.
But honestly, anytime that I've had, like charged people for my services, when you do charge more, your clientele, the quality increases immediately. Like, because the people, when you first start out doing anything like freelancing or whatever, and your prices are super low, the clients you work with are terrible. They're so awful to work with. And the second you raise your prices, most of those problems are solved.
Well, people that buy tabletop games also need to realize the difference between, games like me and John do, where it's just like one dude's just like out of our passion, like making this game, plus a company like WotC. And it's like, I'll be honest, like it's hard to recoup your money, like just selling your book. Like I've probably spent more on my 5e book than I'm ever going to make on it.
Right.
So, like, sorry if it's not up to par of, like, shit like WotC or, like, what's not Green Goblin?
Green Ronin.
Green Ronin.
Yeah, Green Ronin, like, all that stuff. Like, so I'm just, like, one nerd with, like, a friend who's doing the layout and the editing for me. Like, yeah, sorry, it's not going to be quite up to snuff. But and I still spend probably, like, 5,000 euros on this shit.
Yeah.
So, but, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but that's, like... If you are making something that you love, I do think it's worth it to actually put the resources into it and do it right. And of course, like you're not going to have the budgets of something like WotC, but also look how WotC spends their money. Like
it's all
they
watered
do it
down
very badly.
garbage.
Like I can't believe the amount of resources that they have access to and the shit that they produce. Like the art, even like obviously I'm not an artist, so like I can't really criticize what they're putting up. But there's it's like look at the old Easley paintings and like all of the classic D&D art. They could still pay people to do stuff like that. Like amazing, incredible pieces of art, and instead you get this flat digital horse shit that is completely uninspiring, and in some cases is just bad art. Like, I don't get it.
Yeah, they have all these contacts. Like half of the people that like did the art in the 80s are still alive. They're still drawing. You could easily get them, but instead they're like, no, we're gonna get like this Tumblr artist because they will work for exposure and they have the right pronouns. So hey,
we need more bean mouth characters.
It's
exactly.
It's so crazy to me too because we on one of our episodes went through some of this classic art and we're just talking about how awesome it was. And like, if you want to get, it was like the whole thing of like the DM crisis, like nobody wants to be a dungeon master or whatever. And it's like, how do you convince someone to be a dungeon master? It's like, show them these pictures.
Yeah.
If you like, look at those pictures and tell me that you don't want to use your imagination and play this cool fucking game.
Yeah.
Like, and WotC doesn't do that anymore.
And it's all, and it's, someone made a comment who made it. Don Piliano, they cater to the art of the audience they want, but
exactly.
The people that they're catering to are not their audience at all. They're not buying. I don't.
Right.
They're not playing the game anyway.
Yeah.
And so you're driving away the people who would be dungeon masters.
The people they're catering to, like they never my English is failing me all of a sudden. They're never happy with what they're doing. They always have
Of
like
course
more
not.
demands. So
Well, that's the thing
Yeah.
is because they are not there to actually
Yeah.
enjoy the product and to play the game. They're there
Yeah.
to
They're there
destroy
to
it.
destroy you.
Yeah.
They're there to destroy it and nothing more. And the second that you cave to them on any axis, it's just blood in the water, and they're going to demand more and demand
Yeah,
more.
more.
Like,
It's going to be the opposite of what was asked for yesterday,
right.
and it doesn't matter. You
And
know?
it doesn't matter. It doesn't need to make sense.
Yeah.
It's literally about destroying the things that you love. And every time that these companies compromise, like the products get worse and they lose the people who actually built their companies up, through their support.
When you look at the 5e books, like the player's handbook, there's this one, I always use it as an example. I'm not going to find it right now, but I've done it before on stream. There's an illustration of like this black dude with like 2 scimitars, and he's like on top of this crumbling tower, and he's slashing at some goblins, and you actually see blood coming off the goblins. It's like this, the sky is like this yellow color, and the ruins are like this really vibrant orange color, and it looks like a traditional painting. And I'm pretty sure it was like Ralph Horsley who did that one, who's a pretty good artist. He's done a lot of like Pathfinder art and Magic art and Warhammer art and stuff like that. And I noticed that you look in those original 3 core books for 5e, and there's a lot of artists' names in there that I recognize still. They're not the classic artists, but they're for me as an artist, they're guys that I've followed for years.
Yeah.
And then I've looked recently at some stuff, and I'm like, who are these people?
Yeah.
Yeah. I know.
Like Ralph Horsley's name's not in here anymore.
Yeah.
Neither
is this good art.
Yeah.
The first D&D books that I actually bought were like 3.5 when I was visiting America. And like they still had like artists like Tim Bradstreet, who's like done art for like The Punisher,
Yeah.
like he's done like all sorts of like cool shit. He's like a very famous artist.
Sure.
And now it's just like, this is like Susie from Tumblr. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Susie
Susie
did
from
critical
Tumblr,
fan
yeah.
art once, so yeah.
Yeah, we can pay her pennies on the dollar, and we can also virtue signal on Twitter.
Right.
That you have someone who checks all the boxes.
Yeah.
We paid pennies to the they them to paint this terrible picture.
Yeah,
Our book.
exactly.
Let's see.
The absolute state of things.
But yeah, I don't know. Art does. I know there's a lot of people that gripe about it. And I get it too with how art can make or break a game, because it's like my rules or my ideas or my writing is like really good, but no one's going to look at it if it's just text.
Yeah.
And
more than anything else, like I for me, especially if it's someone like an indie publisher, because I think any 100 plus IQ person understands the difference between a self-published individual and Paizo and WotC and understands that. I want personality. I want an artistic vision, especially if you're doing a gonzo or a weird autistic setting with these crazy species and this weird world. Okay, your text is cool. I'm intrigued. But you're talking about a living amoeba with whatever your species is. Help me to understand that. Okay, there's this really interesting faction. It's a techno-futurist cult that is involved in all these sort of clandestine affairs. Okay, give me some evocative. Give me a scene from one of the this black mass or something. Help me understand what you're trying to convey to me. And it doesn't have to be Jeff Easley art. It doesn't have to be, what good art or quality art that is very expensive to get, but make it competent and give it personality.
Yes. Yeah.
I think when people buy my books, for instance, like Atomic Punk, I know there's typos, there's stuff in it that's like a problem. Here I say it's target number 10, and here I say it's target number 11, and it's supposed to be target number 11, and it's just something that I missed. It's like, but people understand that. Oh, it's just one dude. And I
Yeah.
would encourage other people out there that want to support like indie publishers and small time creators to go a little lenient on them. Like when there's a typo in a WotC book, sure, roast them. But like if it's just one guy in his office writing and doing all the art and everything, like I don't know, it's a miracle the guy got the book out in the first place.
Some of those blemishes are what gives it, that make it more endearing, because it's like you can see the blood, sweat, and tears that are, this guy put effort in and money out of his bank account and time, to put together, and like, all right, this is really cool.
And the other thing is, when you make a typo, that's your typo, that's your mistake, and you get to kind of like have that and cherish that, because I have a friend who's a very successful writer, and when he was working, before he started self-publishing, he'd submit his manuscripts and they would create typos that were not in his manuscript. He was just like, what the fuck is wrong with these people? Like, this is this is insane. So like you can at least like, kind of rest easy knowing that like, you made the entire thing, and that mistake is yours, but there wasn't someone else, there was not an HR department screwing with your product.
I do stress about that because I have like severe imposter syndrome, so I do stress about like typos and errors in my stuff. Like especially with this 5e book that's about to be done, because I kickstarted that, and that raised like 5,500. So I feel like beholden to people to like deliver a good product. So I'm just like low-key panicking right now because it's like almost done, and I'm like just thinking like, oh, everyone's gonna hate it and they're gonna shit on it and they're gonna leave me like 1-star reviews. So, but I don't know. Hopefully they'll go right. But yeah.
I mean, like I think having imposter syndrome is probably healthy. Because you don't want to be the guy that's like, this.
If
is
you're
the
this stressed out about it, you probably have
everyone's
the right
gonna
intent,
love it.
You have the right intentions and the goodwill, to do the best that you can.
Yeah, and it's not your first book. I mean, you've already published things before, so like.
That's technically my first book. It just took this long to finish that I had time to do other books.
Right. Got it.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Let's see. Patty's saying like my Mutants game came out with like no mistakes. The boy from Mez, I just made that really Mexican sounding. Big oof. I need to re-release that with a better layout and edits. But I almost feel like just leave it as is, and then you're gonna make more stuff. It's all just a learning experience. I've sort of have to get to the point where, for me personally, where there's going to be mistakes in the stuff I make, and even if I ask someone to edit it and look at it, there's still going to be mistakes in it.
Sure.
So
actually, okay, so here's something that I would highly suggest. If you want to ensure that there are no typos, run your text through ChatGPT, because it will find it and it will spit out the completely correct text, like capitalization, everything. I mean, it's like spell check, but with like arcane sorcery behind it.
Yeah.
I use Grammarly, but useful for stuff for that. It's better than Grammarly, like by a lot. Yeah.
I'll have to try that because
yeah.
All right.
I mean, you could also consider just writing your product for ChatGPT.
My
It'd probably be
issue
better than Wizards of the
Coast. My issue isn't even so much typos. For the most part, I catch them pretty quickly. My issue is just like random little like layout like blemishes. It's like, oh, there's like this extra space in front of a comma, or I'm just like like missing a capital letter somewhere, or like shit like that. And then it just like I just focus on that, and
Yeah, and I mean, it'll eliminate all of that stuff pretty much instantaneously. The only problem is you can't feed it like, 100,000 words at a time. Like, it is like small pieces, but
in paragraph.
I did when we released a podcast episode one time, I took the transcript off of YouTube before we put it on, because I was like, I don't want to write the description for this. So I wanted to take the whole transcript and give it to ChatGPT and just say, summarize this YouTube video. And it wouldn't do it. It was like, this is too long. I was like, fuck.
Yeah.
Max prefers Grammarly. I use Grammarly as well.
Yeah, same.
Because it just integrates really well into like Google Docs or something. But I have fed stuff into Chat GPT and had it like fix mistakes and stuff like that. Chat GPT is just fun to mess around with.
Yeah, it really is.
I've heard GPT-4 is like considerably better as well. I haven't played with it yet though.
Yeah, I have the free one, which is I guess 3, and I've used it to come up with ideas. Like I had to write like 48 like modern team spells for this book, so I just just asked ChatGPT, is like, hey, give me like some cyberpunk like spells for BX. And it gave me like like a list of suggestions, and then I just took those and just like made it my own, and so
I mean, I've used it for like YouTube titles, YouTube tags, like all sorts of stuff. It's very good for like
It's a great supplementary resource.
Yeah, for like mundane tasks. It's excellent.
But you're taking away money from someone who could be like a
some
I'm taking away money that I wouldn't have spent.
I wouldn't have spent at all.
I'm saving money for myself, and at the end of the day, that's all that matters. So
there you go.
Max says, I have GPT-4. He's not much better. And then he said, or I should say, she. Is it a girl now? Like I don't. Has it transitioned?
Soon, any day now.
You ask it how it's feeling, and it's just like fine.
Everything's fine.
Everything's fine. Yeah.
And then it says you should just know.
Yeah.
Why don't you know?
The authorities have been notified.
Well, we're getting towards the end of the stream here. I always like to give the last part here where we just kind of everyone can show what they're doing. So we'll start with you guys. What are you guys? You got anything cool coming up that you want people to know about? I got your YouTube channel linked in the video description, so everyone should go.
Yeah, thank you.
Everyone should go check them out.
Yeah, I mean, please come over, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We've got coming up this Saturday the second session of our Cyberpunk 2020 game. That's going to be a lot of fun. Coming up, we've got podcast coming back. We got kind of stuck in the wage cage for a while, and had
wage
to
cage and Mother Nature.
And reduce our output for a bit, but we're getting back on track. And in the kind of future, not in the near term, but we do have products in the works as well. So be on the lookout for that. Yeah,
nice
on that. But yeah, we will be getting back to our regularly scheduled programming with the podcasts. Come out Monday. We do a 2-hour
live stream on
chill
Thursday
live
nights.
stream, very much like this on Thursday evenings, 9 p.m. Eastern. And like Matt said, we have every other Saturday our Cyberpunk 2020 game.
Yeah. And when inspiration strikes, we do have some very funny YouTube shorts that have come out.
Yes.
So go and check those out. We've used I've used AI voice libraries to dub David Lynch and some other people. They're a lot of fun.
Nice.
and longer, more typical YouTube videos are in the works as well. So that as time goes on, we'll be putting out more YouTube video content as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like you guys stream, and it actually took me a minute to realize that you weren't in the same room together, because you do that like green screen effect where you're sitting next to each other, and then I saw like one of you reach over and your arm disappeared. I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
We're actually not in a fantasy tavern.
Yeah. Although in a couple of weeks, Nick is going to be here in Austin, and we will be filming an episode in person. So
nice. That'll be cool. Yeah.
I have a quick question about Cyberpunk 2020. Do you have netrunners, and do you have them in the same group?
So that's the one chink in the title there. We do have a netrunner. I am using the Cyberpunk Red
netrunning rules.
Yeah, they're way better.
Yeah,
they're better.
I took one look at those rules in 2020. I was like, we're not doing that.
I was just curious.
I started with Shadow 1, 2nd and 3rd edition, and I pretty much had like the same problem. Where, like every time like the decker wanted to do something, it's like, well, I guess I'm gonna get like smoke a cigarette or something.
Yeah.
So
Cyberpunk Red does it much better. There hasn't been a net running scene yet, or a scene where that has come into play yet, but
I'm sure that's
very,
on the way.
very, very
Yeah.
soon.
Yeah.
The bad things are about to start happening,
Things are about
I
to start
think.
Yeah.
Very good. But this was great. I really appreciate.
Yeah, really,
having
really
us on.
Yeah,
had,
it's fun.
had a good time.
Fantastic.
Glad you guys thought to bring us on.
Yeah.
Of course. You guys seem like cool guys, and thought it'd be, especially when you're talking about, you want to do OSR stuff eventually, or just do game stuff eventually. Like, not that Vic and I are experts at it, but we've
Yeah,
done
no.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Certainly
mean,
more
that's-
than us.
I'm just flailing around and somehow I make it work. So I don't know.
Yeah. Vic, you got
Yeah.
anything interesting coming up too, though? I guess
Um,
Modern Necessities in your 5e book, or
Yeah, Modern Necessities. It recently hit Copper Seller on Drive to RPG. I held it all the way around. It's getting towards silver, so that's nice.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, grab that if you want OSR like modern rules. The Modern Adventurer's Guide to Guns and Gear will be coming out soon. That's my 5e modern book that I kickstarted. It's pretty much almost done. It needs like some some cosmetic issues fixed and some typos and stuff that I noticed. But yeah, the PDF for that should be out within the next 2 weeks. And then I'm probably gonna leave it for like a couple of weeks just to see if anyone like messages me like, hey, I noticed this glaring fucking issue, fix that please. And then I'll do the print on demand version. But yeah, I'm glad to be finally done with that, because that's been like an almost 3-year ordeal.
Yeah. That's gonna feel amazing to get that off
yeah,
your shoulders too.
Yeah, so other than that, yeah, you can catch me on Sundays on the Dutch Oven, which is my own stream. If you guys ever want to come on that, you're more than welcome to. That's less of like a discussion like this. We just talk about whatever. We talk about Star Trek, whatever nerd shit we want.
Yeah.
Cool.
You can find me on Saturdays on the Week in Geek with T-shirt Historian, which is also another great stream. And then, well, normally I would do on Tuesdays I would do one shots with Cosface, but we haven't done that in a while because he's been busy. So it's kind of more his show than mine, even though it's on my channel. So I'm just kind of like letting him decide when we pick that up again. And other than that, yeah, I don't know. I have nothing going on. I'm just, a Dutch guy with no life. So
Yeah.
for everyone else out there, I got a Disneyland dungeon video coming out. Did the Disneyland campaign, the Disneyland dungeon video on Wednesday. What's Gygax's view on that? He'd probably agree with most people criticizing old school games that sometimes stuff doesn't make sense. So that'll be an interesting video to talk about. And I'm working on Obsidian and Blood. That's about it.
Nice.
So,
yeah,
hopefully
cool.
soon. Wellen is asking when it's going to be released, and I'm hoping at some point this year, but I'm no promises because I'm doing everything myself. So
Yeah.
We'll see.
yeah, I had a Dutch Oven yesterday, Max, if you want to go back and watch it.
Yeah, and we did not have our episode this week. We're recording, I think, tomorrow night, and then it'll be out. Yeah, it'll be out sometime this week.
All right. Well, I want to thank you guys for coming on. I'm glad you guys could come on, and I know it's later. You guys, I'm over here in Idaho, and you guys are like further east from me, so it's later for you guys. So I appreciate it. It's really late for Vic.
It's all good.
Yeah, really late for Vic.
Yeah, it's 6 a.m. right now, 6:07.
Oof.
Really early for Vic.
Yeah, and I'm drinking whiskey and Coke, so whatever.
Well,
That's the life, man.
Yeah,
well, you made it to 6 a.m. You may as well continue.
yeah, pretty much.
But yeah, thank you guys for coming on. I really appreciate it. Everyone, go check out their channel. Give them a like and
likewise.
sub.
Yeah, thank you.
And yeah, I hope
Yeah,
we'll have to
appreciate
have you guys on
everybody
again.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
Until next time, we'll see you guys later.